So now that we have the basics of a JSR 286 portlet or a Java standard portlet, let's go ahead and take a look at how we are able to create one here within Liferay Developer Studio. So as always, the first thing we're going to do is start off by creating a new module project. So what we're going to do, a lot of different ways to do this. Let's head up to File up here at the top left, followed by New, and then Liferay Module Project. We'll wait for it to load up, and let's go ahead and give this project a name. So we will call this, you can stick with what the book has. We'll call it COM Liferay Training Portlet .JSR 286. So com.liferay.training.portlet.jsr 286. Again, always want to make sure we're using the proper build type as well as creating this module project for the proper version of Liferay, so 7.1. We're going to click on the project template name to reveal our dropdown, and we're looking for war. Let's see. Yeah, so down here towards the bottom, we have war MVC portlet. So war MVC portlet, make sure you have everything as we see it right here, and then let's go ahead and click next. So once we click next, we got to fill out a couple of things. We're going to leave the component class name alone. We're creating a standard portlet, and so in the standard portlet, there's technically no component. So we're going to leave that alone and take care of it a little bit later. For the package name though, we can create one since we're here. So it'll be the same name that we had over in the project name, COM Liferay Training Portlet, and then JSR 286. Again, if you ever need those steps again, just feel free to pause the video and rewind whenever you need to. So once you're ready, go ahead and click finish. Right, I wish we were live so I can get direct feedback. I can always repeat, but since we are here in the video, right, feel free to pause whenever you need to. So right now we're just waiting for our Gradle project to be created over in our training workspace. Right, just as before, we can track the status down here at the bottom right. So almost done, waiting for it to appear under our modules folder. This is not a module, so this is actually going to be here in the wars folder. Kind of sneaky there. So go ahead and open up your wars folder, right, and you'll see the COM Liferay Training Portlet JSR 286. So let's go ahead and we'll expand out the project here and just take a peek at what we have. So let's first start off with our source main Java, and we see that the package here is indeed empty. Since we are not creating a component, we're not really using OSGI to help us out here. And so with this package, what I'm going to do is right click it, select new, and then we're going to select class. Right, let's go ahead and give this class a name. We're going to be calling it JSR in all capitals, 286 numerics, and we're going to just be calling it portlet. So JSR 286 portlet. Right, we can add our interface here if we'd like. We can also add the superclass if we knew what we were extending. Right, so if we were using generic portlet, we can extend generic portlet in the superclass, but we're going to make this a little bit simple. So we're going to be implementing the interface portlet. So here, once you click add for the interface, go ahead and type portlet, and be careful here since there's two of them. So we're going to be selecting the JavaX portlet. So once you have confirmed that you've selected the JavaX portlet, go ahead and click OK. And then once you click OK, go ahead and click finish. Okay, so very good. So we have a bunch of different methods that we're going to have to implement. Now, we don't really have to do much with a lot of these. And so what we're going to be doing is just providing some print statements. So for each one of these methods, go ahead and just add a print statement, a system out, and I'll go ahead and do the same. So system out println, it could be something simple like inside of the init method. The init method like so. And we can do the same for each one. System out println, and then inside of the process action method. It kind of feels like beginner Java, right? But again, we're just getting comfortable here with our portlet. We'll get all of the fun, complicated stuff a little bit later. So inside of render, the render method. There we go. Okay, and then got one more here, the destroy method. So system out println inside of destroy. Almost spelled it wrong. That's okay. And just print statements. There we go. All right. So this implements the methods for the most part. One of the methods that are a little bit more important in this exercise is going to be the render method, right? We know that the render method is used to display something within our portlet application. And so typically speaking, we would be displaying a JSP, and we'll be getting there soon. But for now, back over here in the render method, we're just going to print something in the portlet itself. So the system out print prints in the console. We need something to print within our portlet. So we're going to be using our print writer to help us out here. So not printer, print writer object here. And we're going to be getting this from our render response object dot get writer. Now, autocomplete didn't work for us. We're going to have to change some things up a little bit here. So let's first use Control-Shift-O, bring in the print writer. And my habit here, I always use render response as the name of the object here, but we see that it defaults to request or response, wrong object. So your choice. You can change this to render response, or we can take the easy way out. Just call it response. Make it easy on ourselves. So from the response object, coming from the render response, we're going to be grabbing or getting our print writer object. Right, with the print writer object, we are going to write to the portlet. Right, and then we can write whatever we want. So you can say something like output from the JSR 286 portlet. Right, keep it simple. And I need to work on my spelling. Right, I want to call it printer, but it's just print writer. There we go. All right, so very simple example here. What we're doing is just implementing our portlet interface as a standard war. Right, we want to display something within the portlet itself. So we're implementing the render method not only to print to our console, but using this print writer to also print within the portlet application itself. All right, so far so good. We have the Java class, the portlet class implemented. Now we know there is a very important file within a standard portlet. It's going to be our portlet.xml. So let's go ahead and take a peek over there. All right, so opening up source main resources, content, and it's not there. So let's try this one more time. Let's head over to the source folder, main. Let's try web app, webinf, and there it is, portlet.xml. So source, main, web app, webinf, and then we're going to be selecting portlet.xml. And again, this is just kind of getting comfortable with our basics here. Once we progress through, right, some of this is going to be laid away to the wayside. All right, so we can see a good amount of info here, the portlets that are available to us, the portlet classes, and so on. One of the things that we want to change could be the portlet name, for example. So the portlet name is the name of the project, right? Maybe we wanted to change that up a little bit. We could if we wanted to. Display name, kind of the same story. One of the things that we do need to change though is this portlet class. Right now the portlet class that we are using is called JSR 286 portlet. So let's make that change. Right, I'm gonna take a shortcut here, right? Since I don't have the package name memorized offhand, and I may not want to type it. So I'm gonna head back over to my portlet class, and then we can copy the package name here. Calm Liferay Training Portlet, JSR 286. Once I have that copied, I'll head back over to my portlet.xml. Right, so portlet class is not MVC portlet, saying right, we don't even have that class. So go ahead and remove that. And then we're going to add the package that I just copied. I suppose I could have took it from the portlet name. So JSR 286 and then portlet. Once you have that, go ahead and save. Click on your floppy disk up here at the top left. All right, so now that we have our portlet class here confirmed, right, we have a couple of other fields that we could change up if you want. Things like the name of the portlet info, and so on. So if you want to change those things, feel free to do so. But I'm going to make my life a little bit easier and leave those things alone. So if you're satisfied with everything that's here in your portlet.xml, let's go ahead and test this out by deploying our project. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to our Gradle tasks. And you'll see there's a lot of different projects here already. Right, so we're going to be looking for ours. So this is Calm Liferay. So scrolling through, and for me it's towards the bottom. So I'll expand out my project, Calm Liferay Training Portlet. And then from here, we're going to expand out the build folder. And then we're going to select or double click deploy. So this process does take a tiny bit longer, and let's talk about why that is. And so first off, we see that we are grabbing a couple of dependencies from Liferay's from Maven repo. So that's first and foremost. Along the way as well, we are technically deploying this WAR file into the OSGI container. And so face value would tell us these are two different things. They might have some sort of compatibility issue, but Liferay behind the scenes will take care of that for us. It'll actually take the WAR file and wrap it in something called a WAB file, WAB, and then pretty much wrap it with something that the OSGI container can understand and work with. So if you're looking within your console, you'll see the inside of init method, just confirming that our portlet has indeed been deployed. We know the init method corresponds with the deploying or the successful deployment of our portlet. So let's go ahead and head over to our web browser and try to add this portlet to our page here. So back over here in my web browser, I'll head over, and it's been a while since I logged in. So I'll go ahead and refresh here and wait for the prompt for logging in. Right, between you and me, right, this is not all continuous. Who knows what day this actually is and when I actually did this recording. So anyways, let's go ahead and log in. test@liferay.com, password of test. Right, easy password to remember, just waiting for the login process to kick in. Right, I'll exit out of this, save the password. Want to be safe, right? Don't want, people to jump on my computer and be able to access Liferay. All right, so we're going to head back to the main page, the welcome page, and we're going to do so by clicking on Liferay here at the top left corner. So go ahead and click Liferay, and once the home page or the welcome page loads back up, let's head over and click on the plus button up here at the top right. Let me try that again. So I'll close the menu, and then I'll click the plus button at the top right. As you can see, I'm having issues here. If you are having issues at any time, oftentimes easy solution is just to refresh the page. So let me try that. So page has been refreshed. Let's click on that plus button one more time. And there we go. Right, so letting the add menu load up, and it might take a little bit of time. We'll be patient here as it's loading. Right, if impatience takes over, I'll try to refresh again. So we'll select the widgets section, and then from widgets, let's head over to sample. And then this is where our portlet is. Calm Liferay Training Portlet and JSR 286 Portlet. This is the first time we're adding a portlet together, so let's go over the basics. There's two different ways you can add a portlet. I'll show you my preferred method first. What you can do is click and hold, and then drag and drop. So once you see that dark blue line, you can go ahead and let go, and that's where the portlet is going to be placed. Right. Alternatively, you can take your mouse cursor, highlight the application over in the widget section, and well, it's kind of chopped off here. For other applications, you'll see add. So you can just click on that add, and it'll automatically add it at the very top, like so. So we see as we add the portlet to the page, the render phase or the render method is going to be called. So we know that the render method has successfully been called because we can see the output that we added there. Let's head back over to our Liferay Developer Studio, and we'll see that indeed the render method has been called. Our print statements have been displayed. So very good. Again, this is a standard portlet here, right? We'll get into some of the nitty-gritty details of what this is going to look like over in the Liferay world. But before we do, one more exercise, one more part that we're going to be going through. One of the essential aspects of portlets is having the portlet render a JSP. So this is what we're going to be doing next. So we're going to be thinking about, well, where do we want to place this JSP? Now, when we create a Liferay project, it actually gives us that directory. It's under here in web app, gives us this view.jsp. So if you're perfectly content with that, we can use this view.jsp. But when we start working in the Liferay world, technically speaking, we put it elsewhere. We usually have our JSPs over in the source main resources folder. This is where it is. So we're going to go ahead and we'll kind of simulate realism, or at least simulate the Liferay world. So we're over here in source main resources. Right, I'm going to right click source main resources, and we're going to create a new folder here. So source main resources, head over to new, followed by other. And we're going to be creating a folder. This is just going to be a regular or a general folder here. I'll go ahead and click next. Okay. And then from here, right, we are going to create two folders at the same time. So the first folder I'm going to create is going to be in all capital letters. It's going to be called meta-inf. After that, we're going to add a slash, and we're going to create another folder called resources. So source main resources, meta-inf resources. So once you have this all typed out, go ahead and click finish. So I'll click finish on my end. And now that we have the second resources folder, we're going to go ahead and create our view.jsp inside of that resources folder. So I'll go ahead and right click resources, head over to new, followed by file. And we're going to call this file view.jsp. Now again, you technically could call this JSP whatever you want, but we're just sticking with the standard here. Right? The default JSP will be that view.jsp. So once you have that, go ahead and click finish. All right. Now we don't have to put anything special here in the view.jsp. You can type something like displaying the view.jsp, right? And all caps here is, the indicator that I am yelling this. I'll refrain from yelling since, that might hurt. So displaying the view.jsp. Now we need to add the logic to actually display this JSP. So let's head over to our JSR 286 Portlet class. So JSR 286 Portlet class, and we're going to be doing the rendering of the JSP in the render method. So let's head down there. First things first, I'm going to comment out the print writer. So I'll highlight these two lines here for the print writer. I like to use the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-C, as in Charlie, to enable comments like that. So Control-Shift-C, with those two lines highlighted, will add those comments. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we need to get the Portlet session. The Portlet session, we're going to be creating an object from the Portlet session, and it's going to be coming from the render request object. So the render request object is this request object here within my method signature. So request dot get Portlet session, and this is going to be without any parameters. All right, going to use Control-Shift-O. So Control-Shift-O as an Oscar to bring in the necessary import to take care of that Portlet session. Next step here, I'm going to need to get my Portlet context. So Portlet context, right, create an object based off of that. And that's going to be coming from the Portlet session. So Portlet's uppercase S there. Portlet session dot get Portlet context. I'm using autocomplete here. And again, at any time, if you need to pause, right, feel free to do so. And then finally, our Portlet request dispatcher. So Portlet request dispatcher, Portlet request dispatcher, and that's going to be coming from the Portlet context object. Okay, context. And then we're going to get our request dispatcher. Okay, and we're going to have a path here. Let me bump this down, Control-Shift-O. All right, so what we're doing here is we are trying to get the specific path to the JSP that we want to render. Now, the path variable is what we're going to be creating next. All right, so I'm going to bump what we just coded here. We're going to create a new string. It's going to be that path variable, path, and this is going to be equal to the path of our JSP. So the root level here is going to be from source made resources. Okay, so we're going to add the meta-inf. Okay, so meta-inf resources, and then view.jsp. Remember to add the semicolon here at the end, and that takes care of the path here. Now we can add some logic here to do a little bit of testing. If we were feeling dangerous, this would technically be enough, but if there's something wrong with the path, we wouldn't exactly know. So we're going to add some logic here so that we can determine if the path is good. So if the portlet request dispatcher, I'll use control spacebar to autocomplete here. If this object is null, we're going to have a bad time, right? We are not able to get the path of the JSP without that portlet request dispatcher object. So we need it. Okay, we can throw a system dot error dot print line. Right? You can say something like the path is not valid. Technically, we would call it a valid include, but let's not worry too much about that. All right. Else. Okay. Last part of this is we need to pass the path off to be rendered, basically. Right. So to do this, we're going to use our portlet request dispatcher one more time. We're going to include the render request and the render response object. All right, so get the portlet session, get the portlet context from the session. We're then going to get the request dispatcher, basically saying which JSP are we going to render, and it's going to be this path string that we specified. Right, we're specifying our view.jsp, and if there is no portlet request dispatcher object, right, we have nothing to render. So we're going to say the path is not valid. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and use this include method to essentially render the JSP for us. So let's go ahead and redeploy. So back over here on the right hand side with the Gradle task, let's go ahead and deploy one more time. So let's see if this is going to work or not. If it doesn't work, the first thing we're going to check to see is to make sure that this path here is okay. All right, so it looks like the redeploy process is done. We see inside of init, so it has been redeployed. Gonna head back over to the UI. Fingers crossed. Let's go ahead and refresh. That was taking a little bit of time. Typically, that's a good sign. Hey, look at that. So we are displaying the view.jsp, or at least that's what the JSP says. All right, there is a bonus exercise, but I think you guys got the idea here. So big ideas here when we are still able to create Java standard portlets. Now in the Liferay world, we're going to do things a little bit differently, but we are going through this exercise to help establish the fundamentals and to gain an idea of how the lifecycle works, as well as to see it in action.